Good evening, everyone. And it is evening. It's 11:03 on Sunday, August 6th. I'm Gordon Causey, as always, and can't quite see her. There she is, Candy the Wonder Pup, who's waiting for her expected treat. So sit, shake, lay down, speak, speak, speak. And there she is. And that gives me peace. I see I have someone watching. If you want to chime in, you're most welcome. Always like, share, subscriptions. You know the drill. I've titled this something to the effect of non-compliance is essential. If or when mandates come back, when the vaccine passport that we went through from roughly September of 2021 until March of 2022, October, November, December, January, February, March. So we had about a 6-month period window there where where the vaccine passport was in place. You couldn't sit down. A Canadian could not sit down in a simple Tim Hortons to have a coffee without displaying their personal medical information to an employee at Tim Hortons or wherever. I just did a podcast, just wrapped up within the last half hour or so, talking with a gentleman by the name of Kelly Hale. And Kelly owned a pub restaurant in a sports bar in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. Kingston's a decent sized city, 150,000. And he was a lion right from the beginning before the vaccine passport was introduced. But once they announced that this vaccine passport would be coming into effect, he put up a sign on his signboard that said, all welcome. Now, I don't know the exact words he used, but it basically said, all welcome, and no vaccine ID required, or words very close to that effect. So he was right from the beginning under the target before the vaccine passport was even introduced on the 22nd of September 2021. That was the date it came into effect in this province. Even before it had come into effect, he had enforcement officials coming and talking to him and issuing tickets because he wasn't requiring his patrons to be masked up. Remember that beautiful theater that so many double-digit IQ Mensa dropouts like to play, where they'd go into an establishment wearing a mask, and then once they sat down, they would take the mask off. Like all of a sudden in the seated position, a mask isn't needed. Viruses only spread when you're standing up, or when you're walking to the bathroom, or whatever the case. And so he let it be known right from the beginning that he wouldn't abide by this. And I went to his establishment a number of times. I went on September 22nd. That's the day of my wedding anniversary. So as an unvaccinated person, my wife and I, we couldn't go out to dinner. Well, we could, thanks to an individual like Kelly Hale opening up his restaurant. Now, here's the thing. Kelly is a rare bird. There were lots of people who were against this agenda, who were against vaccine passports, against the mask mandates, against a lot of it. I mean, obviously, we saw that with the massive protests when, must have been millions of Canadians who lined the highways and overpasses on the Trans-Canada Highway to show their support for the truckers who were going to Ottawa to put an end to all this insanity. But at the same time, there were a lot of people who engaged in what I'll call passive-aggressive non-compliance. What some restaurants did is you would go into the establishment and they would ask to see your vaccine passport. And if you showed them your phone and it could have a picture of your dog, then they'd look at it and go, okay, thank you. And they were playing the game so that for the frightened COVID Karens and Carls who are all, you have to ask for a passport or I don't feel safe. So they did it to placate those individuals. Well, you can't placate people like that. It's those individuals who are the reason why we went through the insanity that we went through. The masking mandates, which they started in 2020, and I think it was in the later part of the summer where they started to come down, right at the beginning, right at the very start. Even Dr. Anthony Fauci, he let out some truth in a 60 Minutes interview and said that there's no evidence to show that masks stop viral spread. And besides that, they can make things worse because people who wear a mask touch their face all the time, which is something you want to avoid when you're dealing with any type of pathogen, any type of germ or bacterial or pathogenic spread. You don't want people touching their face because of cross-contamination. People rub their nose, their mouth, wipe their eyes, and then they touch things, and then someone touches those things. We learn this all in grade 7 and 8 health class in middle school. And Fauci put out that wisdom. Dr. Theresa Tam, Canada's chief medical officer of health, she cited that wisdom in interviews. Dr. David Williams, who was Ontario's former, at that time, David Williams was our chief medical officer of health in the province of Ontario, and they all said the same thing. Masking leads to people touching their face, and we all know that to be true because you watch these mental midgets, constantly pulling their mask up and down, adjusting, taking them off, putting them on. It's a germ rag. It's a bacterial magnet. It's a petri dish. And what are they doing? They're touching it, and then they're touching everything else. And so at the beginning, they told us that, but these COVID Carls and Karens were so traumatized by the daily drumbeat of fear coming out from our media, from our government, from our health officials, the deadly coronavirus, you're going to die, that they were terrified. And they were, we have to do something, make people wear a mask. And they screamed for masks. And so finally, science was thrown in the garbage, and we were given politics masquerading as science. Well, all right, hey, they want the masks, make them wear them. And we all saw what would happen. How many times were public officials seen unmasked? And they would just say, oh, I made a mistake. It was an error. Sorry about that. No, they're not stupid. They knew that masking was dumb. But the simple fact of the matter is, worse than the masks is the fact that come September, October, we don't know when exactly yet, the Pfizers, the Modernas of the world are already working on and they have said that they will have available come September, October, this fall, they're going to have an updated COVID quote unquote vaccine, one that supposedly would be targeting this XBB variant and the subvariants of XBB, I guess. So, and it's already, I shared recently an article out of CBC Hamilton, yellow, crappy, horrible journalism, only presenting one side of the narrative, presenting a doctor who her lab had been awarded $50,000 by Pfizer. And surprise, surprise, she's urging Hamiltonians, in this case, because that's where she's from, she's with McMaster University, urging the people of Hamilton to get up to date on their boosters when get this shot when it becomes available. It's not even approved yet, but they know it is going to be approved. You know that. It's a slam dunk. There's no chance. We've already signed the contracts. We're out. Canada's already slated to receive millions of doses. And if you think that they're not going to force it on us again, I think you're being foolish. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they won't force it. But forewarned is forearmed, and I think an abundance of caution is needed, because I believe there's a very strong likelihood that they are going to do a rinse and repeat, and it'll start out as strongly urging. Then maybe they go back to bribes like they did last time, get a free Krispy Kreme donut or something, or free burger and fries, all the stupid, we're a dumb population. So here, have a donut. For the kids, we'll have an outdoor carnival party dance to get your kids to roll up their sleeves. And if that doesn't work, then I can see. And right now in Canada, the health authorities are urging everyone to get a booster dose if it has been 6 months since their last dose or your last infection of COVID. I mean, you're supposed to be vaccinated. Vaccines are alternately called immunizations. And when you're immunized against something, you don't get it. So obviously, if you got an immunization and then you got the disease you were immunized against, you were never immunized, ever. And yet, so what they're strongly suggesting now is if it has been 6 months since you got your last poke, or since your last infection, to get up to date and go see your doctor or the pharmacy or whoever and get another dose, and then get another one in the fall with this new XBB targeting shot. And what I'm going to suggest, Matthew is saying, and God bless you, my friend. I love the encouragement. Matthew just wrote, I have to jump off, but I subscribe to your channel. Keep spreading the good word. It's what I do. This channel isn't monetized. I do this for my own, I call it catharsis. It helps me work through my thoughts. I have these conversations almost daily with people when I'm out and about. Had them today. I was at an event, a family event, other side of Toronto. I live way east of Toronto. I'm out in Northumberland County, southeastern Ontario, dragged all the way across Toronto and then to the other side. A large family event, must have been 40, 50 people there. And I was talking about it then. They're going to force this shot. Now, everyone I talk to, they're like, well, I only got 2, or I only got 2 in a booster. And I said, well, what are you going to do when they mandate this new one? You're going to get it too? Oh, no, I'm not. Well, you can't be quiet about it. You have to be public about it. There were people who refused the shot, but didn't want to take the heat. And so if someone asked, I don't like talking about that. I don't like disclosing my personal information. Respect that, please. And I get that to a degree, but a lot of people assume that, he's got it. He just doesn't want to push his view on people. I respect him. I bet he got it. I can tell you there are 2 faith leaders in my town, both of whom played things so well, because congregations in churches, and I'm intimately familiar with both congregations in both churches. One is a Reformed church, one is a Pentecostal, and I've been a regular attendee at both at different times. And I love both congregations. I don't have anything good, bad, or otherwise to say about either one. Or rather, I have lots good to say and nothing bad to say about either one. So long as you're in the Word, that's all that counts in my world. Anyway, both pastors of both churches didn't want to realize that the vaccines were a divisive issue. And so they didn't want to alienate anyone in their congregations. So they both played their cards close to their vest, never divulging the fact that they hadn't gotten the shots. And those who hadn't gotten the shot said, you know what, I don't think he got it. And those who did said, oh yeah, I think he got it. And it was a shock. One individual, one of the pastors, he finally had to drop the bomb in a board meeting where they have, the church leadership is meeting, and there were members on that leadership board advocating that the church needed to bring in a vaccine passport. They needed to enforce this. They needed to require congregants to be vaccinated in order to attend worship. And the pastor said, well, if you do that, you'll have to get a new pastor, because he hadn't taken it. It led to shock. And what I'm going to suggest is that you cannot be quiet. And restaurants that would play this stupid game of checking people's phones and looking at a picture of their dog to placate the COVID Karens and Carls. You know what? We can't worry about the COVID Carls and Karens. There's a certain element of the population who aren't just going to listen to what the Nazi party says. They're card-carrying members. They like authoritarian rule. They love being. They want to see everyone hammered by these rules. They love the rules. And we can't worry about them. Cannot worry about them. Let them go nuts. Let them show their true colors, because they will. We've got this doctor in Ottawa, and I can't remember her name, Mirth or something. She sits on the Ottawa school board. She actually got herself elected as a school board trustee. And she's been on Charles Adler, who used to be a Toronto talk show radio host, something of a prominent name in broadcasting, Charles Adler. He had her on his radio show, which is now based out of Ottawa. And she was just, the woman should be wearing a brown shirt and jackboots. I mean, listen to me. I know, and everyone should be wearing a mask, and and don't interrupt me. And he, on the live radio, talk radio, he just said, oh, just hang up on her. She's a nut bar. And she's a zealot. She's one of these individuals. She's one of the COVID Karen and Carl. She has a medical degree. I don't. But there are individuals who do have the highest levels of medical accreditation, who are opposed to masking, who are opposed to the vaccines. Accreditation means, you can find an expert to substantiate just about any point of view at the end of the day. What I'm saying is, if this comes back, and as I say, I strongly suspect that it will, they're going to force it again on us, then what I strongly suggest is you can't be shy. You can't pretend, well, I don't want to develop. No, I'm not getting that shot. Why not? Well, go to clinicaltrials.gov and look at their most recent shot, Comirnaty, which they are, and I'll link this up sometime because I can share this, because it's clinicaltrials.gov, which is the US repository for all clinical trials taking place. And Pfizer is doing a trial on their most recent updated shot, not the new one. This is this Comirnaty. I have trouble pronouncing the name of it. That's the brand name. Comirnaty or something sounds a lot like comorbidity to me. Anyway, they're doing a trial currently that's not slated to end until 2028, 5 years from now. And it's to determine the safety and effectiveness of that shot. They're saying it's safe and effective. Well, wait a minute. You have a trial going right now with about 300, I think it's 300 or 400 participants, and you're doing a trial on this Comirnaty shot, the one that's going out right now as we speak. And one of the goals of your trial is determine whether or not the shot is safe and effective. And specifically, they're looking at myocarditis. They're looking at heart damage and trying to determine if it caused it. Well, and the results will be known. That trial has an estimated study completion date in 2028. Well, I'll wait until 2028. There are plenty of reasons to say No, science is a slow process. It doesn't move at warp speed. Pfizer had a drug on the market called Bextra from 2000 to 2005. Look it up. And it was an anti-inflammatory drug and approved and on the market from 2000 to 2005 and then removed from the market. Why? Why did they have to take it off the market? Because of heart damage and deaths. Even when a drug or a pharmaceutical product goes through the proper, meticulous, time-consuming trial process, taking 10 plus years, even then mistakes are made. We have no long-term safety profile. I mean, there are tons of reasons to say no, but do not be quiet about saying no. Churches, don't gather clandestinely. Be like the James Coates, the Tim Stevens, the Henry Hildebrands, the Jacob Riomes, the Phil Hutchings, and open your churches publicly so that it's a beacon to people to let them know that you don't have to be afraid of the cooties, because that's what happened. I talk to people all the time, tell them, yeah, I went, Henry Hildebrand, his church in Aylmer, yeah, I went there 8 or 9 times. Gathered with hundreds of people. We hugged, we shook hands. I stayed over in strangers' homes. Henry was kind enough to say to me, if you want to, it's a long drive for you. For me, it's 300 plus kilometers. It's a 3-4 hour drive to get out to Aylmer, Ontario from where I live. Henry's like, members of our congregation will have you over. Bob's your uncle. Okay. God bless. I during COVID, when, don't go outside of your bubble, I was staying, not just me, was staying with people, strangers, people who lived 300-400 kilometers away from me, who were, you talk about the chance for cross-contamination. If there's a deadly virus spreading around, it would have torn through that congregation and through Jacob Riomes and through Phil Hutchings and Tim Coates. It would have torn through. And I'll tell you something, if indeed there had been a deadly, highly contagious pathogen spreading around, there would have been no need for public health orders, because people would do it out of basic common sense. James Coates, Tim Stevens, these pastors who kept their churches open, these are followers of Christ. If there had been a genuine pathogen, if they had seen people in their congregations getting sick, being put on ventilators, dying, if this had been happening, there'd be no need for a public health order. They would have done it willingly. The reason it was forced on us is because it was fiction. It was fiction. It was on the news. You were programmed to believe that there was a deadly virus pathogen floating around. Go back into the early days when Theresa Tam was quoted in the Washington Post saying that 80% of Canada's COVID, the deaths they counted as COVID, that 80% of them were occurring in long-term care, nursing home type facilities where people are living out their final days in God's waiting room, in heaven's waiting room. These are people at the end of natural life expectancy. In Ontario, roughly 75% of residents in long-term care, according to the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, roughly 75%, I think it's 74 or 76% of Canadian Ontarian long-term care residents are suffering from cardiovascular disease. 90%, I think it's 86, I'm rounding, 86% can't bathe, feed, dress, toilet themselves without extensive help. Something like 40% are taking 10 or more prescription medications. This is an incredibly weak, sick, frail population. And I'm not disputing that some type of respiratory virus sickness was going around, and you get a respiratory bug spreading around in a congregate setting like a nursing home, and it's moving around. What happened when an older individual at the end of their life, according to Dr. John Campbell, and I would invite everyone to watch his YouTube channel. He's a professor of nursing. He's not a medical doctor as such. Has no medical degree, and he's not an actual MD. He's a professor of nursing. He's a nurse practitioner himself and a teacher of nurses. And he has done yeoman's work in pouring through UK government sourced data. And it showed that early in the pandemic, the protocol for treating an elderly patient considered at the end of natural life, that the protocol involved prescribing that individual either both opiates and morphine. The actual words they give are the more scientific names of these drugs, but they're opiates, coming from opium like heroin, and morphine, painkiller. This is the same protocol that is followed for dying patients in a palliative setting, people who are dying. And what happens is those two drugs given in combination suppress respiration. So someone catches a respiratory bug, ailment, disease, and they're struggling to breathe. And what were they doing in the UK? They were giving them a drug regimen that would suppress their breathing. I can't breathe. Well, here, take these. They'll make it harder to breathe. But the opiates, heroin, I mean, it's not heroin, but heroin comes from opium. Opiates come from heroin. Keep you calm, so you don't scream and yell. Hopefully you just sleep and slide off into your next life. And was that same protocol followed in Canada? I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think anyone would be surprised. This has been a cock-up from the very beginning. And we're in a lull right now. But we have the fall coming. They have their jabs. They're working on them now. Canada's ordering millions of doses. More than 40 million, I'm sure. And they've thrown out, I think it's 14, it was reported just in the National Post that 14.4 million doses this year have already been thrown in the garbage, with another 4 million slated to be thrown in the garbage before the end of the year, because Canadians go to the Canada Health website, or you can just do a search under Canada booster uptake and look for the Canada Health webpage, and it'll give you what the actual numbers are, and it's 95% of Canadians are not up to date on their boosters. They've tapped out. I'm not getting any more. But it's not enough to be quiet about it. We have to be loud. And the COVID Carls and Karens who are going to scream that you're endangering everyone and da-da-da-da, now suck it up, buttercup. I'm not complying. And it's that old adage of hang together or hang separately. And don't be quiet about it. If they bring back the vaccine passport, businesses need to do like Kelly Hale did with his Jack Tuesday's pub. He had a chair out front, and on the chair was a sign that said, if the Ministry of Health wants, or if the health officials want to check vaccine passport, this chair is for their employee to check. If the chair is empty, they obviously don't care. It's not the job of some owner of a restaurant or a pub or a waitress or a waiter to ask for people's private medical information? What kind of country, what kind of province, what kind of city, what kind of state do you live in? You want to do the dirty work? Do it yourself. So stand up, everyone. And it's not going to be everyone, but the more of us who are loud, vocal, public, the better. We can't be voices in the wilderness. We have to be numerous. Doesn't have to be the majority, just, and then they can look and see. I'm not vaccinated. I didn't get the COVID shots. Aren't I supposed to be dead? This, what did Joe Biden say? Dr. Joe Biden is the winter of death or something for the unvaccinated. Well, how come myself and everyone I know who refused the shots? Yeah, I know. I read the CBC News article about that guy in Upper Bootlick, Saskatchewan, who didn't get the jab and died. Some 70-plus-year-old. Give me his full medical history. Give me all the details. Don't just cherry pick. That's propaganda. That's what we've been dealing with. I'll be doing more videos talking about the yellow journalism that we've been undergoing, but I've already gone on far too long. I've said what I want to say. God bless. I'll end it by saying, at the end of the day, if I'm right and what is coming, the expression Christians often use is build your ark. And the ark is Jesus Christ. If you think that Donald Trump, if you're an American and you think Donald Trump is going to send all this crashing down, you're looking to a false Messiah, or RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., or in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, or Maxime Bernier, or whoever. There's only one in whom salvation can be found, Jesus Christ. So I'll end it there. And again, Matthew, thank you for your comment and subscribing. Anyone wants to subscribe, like, share, whatever you want to do. I'm a voice in the wilderness. This station is not, this channel isn't monetized. I don't get any money for this, so I don't engage in the usual games. And I know a bit about how the YouTube world and such work. If I wanted to have 10,000 views on my videos, it's easy. There are services, you pay them, and they bombard your video with a bunch of IP hits, and bang, within nanoseconds of a video going live, it already has thousands, tens of thousands of views. You can do the same thing for subscriptions. They're not real people, and it works because this is the way our world works. People like to be in a herd. There's comfort in numbers, and that's something I'm talking about to a degree here, and I get that. There's comfort in numbers. So people see that a channel has 50,000, 100,000, a few million subscribers, and they're more inclined to subscribe than if they see that it has a dozen or 20 and they go, well, no one watches that. It can't be popular. It can't be good. I would ask you simply, if you like my videos, ignore the numbers. They're piddly. This is a pathetic, miserable channel. But if you like it, decide for yourself. Are you that individual who waits at a play or a concert to see if everyone stands up before you stand up and give a standing ovation? Or do you decide right from your own on that was amazing and I'm standing up. I'm going to lead it. And admittedly, I've been both. I have been both. There have been times where I'm like, well, see if anyone else does. Guilty. It's part of human nature. We're all guilty of it. But we need to be bold now. Stop looking around. If you're a Christian, pray and ask for the Spirit to lead you. And don't look to your Don't look at the crowd to determine whether or not you're going to grow a pair. I know it doesn't sound like the most Christian euphemism, but it works. Grow a set. It's my username on Reddit, grow a set. And on Twitter, I'm Gordy Canuck. Anyway, appreciate you watching, and talk to you in a few days. We'll see what happens in this crazy world. God bless.